Welcome to yet another exciting video, in this case episode 6 of my Star Trek The Original Series episode breakdown video series. In this video I'll be looking at Season 2 episodes 30 to 35 of Star Trek The Original Series or Generation to identify historical references which can be used to determine the original history of the Star Trek universe. The episode order I'm using in this video series is the production order. In order to understand the development of the history or vision of Star Trek, we need to study the episodes in the order they were written. While I'm uncertain of the exact writing order, the production order is about as close as I can confirm. The episode order information as broadcast is also included. Special thanks to the transcripts which can be found on the Chakotay site. When Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek back in 1966, he had a vision which remained basically consistent over the following 3 years. The animated series and early movies retained this consistency in the most part. When The Next Generation was released in 1987, Gene's vision had changed and the past needed to change in order to be consistent with his new vision. This video series will look at the original vision of Star Trek, starting with the earliest source material. Any historical facts from later sources which contradict the earlier references will be assumed to be an error. Minor changes in nomenclature can be excused. Catspaw is the first episode of the second season. It was the 30th episode produced. Its stardate is 3018.2 and its original air date was the 27th of October 1967. In this episode we discover Pyra 7, which is an uninhabited planet which had been previously surveyed but which now contains a new alien life form from an alternate dimension or parallel universe. In this episode we're introduced to two totally alien life forms from another dimension or alternate universe called Korba and Sylvia. There's not much new information or useful information in this episode. Pyra 7 is an uninhabited planet which was previously surveyed. It was uninhabited before the survey. When the Star Trek got there, it was inhabited by two alien life forms, and it's now uninhabited again. In this episode, we discover that there is an alternate universe with a totally alien life form. While the term alternate universe is not actually used, the term life form, totally alien to our galaxy, is used. Metamorphosis is the 9th episode of the second season. It was the 31st episode produced. Its stardate is unknown and its original air date was the 10th of November 1967. In this episode, the shuttlecraft Galileo, which we saw earlier, is now called NCC 1701/7. Enterprise shuttlecraft NCC 1701/7 is being piloted by Kirk, assisted by Spock. In the episode, we discover there is a war about to occur on Epsilon Carinus 3. This is probably not a Federation planet and is probably an alien planet. It could be in some loose alliance with the Federation, thus the Federation's involvement. The Gamma Carinus region contains a large number of what they call asteroids, one of which is habitable and contains an alien and one human. In this episode, Cochrane, one of the humans on this planet, does not know what the Federation is, which is another piece of evidence to indicate the Federation is a latter organization. As Cochrane disappeared in 2117, he would have never known about the Federation or even the Earth-Romulan War. Even though Cochrane disappeared in 2117, he was familiar with Vulcans by sight. The Vulcans must be in regular contact with the Earth in 2017. As I've indicated, I think first contact probably occurred in or by 1999. In the episode, we're introduced to Zefram Cochrane of Alpha Centauri. Traditionally, when a name has a location in it, a person's name, that location is the birth location. Cochrane would almost certainly have been born on Alpha Centauri in 2030. This was probably 10 years after the planet colonization process began. As the colony on Alpha Centauri was highly dependent on Earth, there would have been a major interest in speeding up faster than light speed. In 2055, the SS Valiant may have had a speed of 20 times the speed of light, which would make the time to travel to Earth about 3 months. Zefram Cochrane died 150 years ago, which would make it 2115. Okuda states it was 2117, which is what I will assume, as it does not really make that much difference. Zefram Cochrane was 87 years old, which means he was born in 2027. Okuda states this occurred in 2030, and I'll go with his numbers as well, as it is more likely that he could have been born on Alpha Centauri, and this sort of helps it. Zephyrin Cochrane was about 35, which corresponds to his age when he developed warp drive. Okuda claims this occurred when he was 31. Spock holds Zephyrin Cochrane in high esteem, which seems to imply his discovery was something even the Vulcans were impressed with. This is the reasons why I think humans were the first to develop the warp drive, which must be remembered was not much better than impulse power when it was first developed. In the episode, Kirk states there are 1,000 planets, I'm assuming in the Federation. The numbers I've been working on is about 850 inhabited planets, but there must be many more uninhabited planets which may have been explored or may even have some minor base on it, so 1,000 is probably not too far out. Cochrane was not familiar with the Universal Translator, which implies there was minimal contact with alien races when he died. The key takeaways from this episode is that we discover 2 more planets, one of which is an alien non-Federation planet and one which is an alien planet inhabited by this ephemeral companion alien creature. The most interesting information is to do with Zephyrin Cochrane of Alpha Centauri, who is probably born on Alpha Centauri in 2027 or 2030 and who disappeared when he was 87 in 2114 or 2117. He discovered the warp drive, which Okuda has stated in 2061, or it could have also been in 2065. As companion, that's the alien, has restored him to an age of 35. This may have been his age when he invented the warp drive. Totally wild guess here. Okuda feels it's actually 31, and as it does not make a difference, I'll go with the Okuda timeline. The final interesting point is Zephyrin Cochrane is very familiar with Vulcans and is not aware of the Universal Translator. This implies the Vulcans were one of a very few, or if any, other aliens in contact with Earth before 2117. Friday's Child is the 11th episode of the second season. It was the 32nd episode produced. Its stardate is 3497.2 and its original air date was the 1st of December 1967. In this episode, we discover Capella 4. Capella 4 is a planet inhabited by humanoids, which has a rare mineral on it, which the Federation would like. It must be on the edge of Federation space. Some more, most likely biased information about the Klingons is provided. Their empire is mainly made up of conquered planets, at least according to Kirk. In this episode, we discover there is a freighter called the SS Deidre. The SS Deidre is a freighter with a maximum speed of warp 2. It seems to be in some form of convoy. We also are told of another spacecraft, the SS Caroline. This is another Federation ship, and I have to assume it is also a freighter. Key takeaways from this episode is that we discover another alien inhabited planet, which the Federation signs a mining treaty with. We also discover, according to Kirk at least, the Klingon Empire is mainly made up of conquered planets. I assume only the alien planets are conquered, and there is a large number of Klingon colony planets, although we never really come across any of them. Who Mourns For Adonais is the second episode of the second season. It was the 33rd episode produced. Its stardate is 3468.1, and its original air date was the 22nd of September 1967. In this episode, the Enterprise explores a planet called Polis 5 and finds no intelligent life. Presumably it is habitable, just no intelligent life on it. The Enterprise then explores another planet, this time it's Polis 5. I assume it's in the same system as Polis 4, but it could be a separate system. That's never made clear in the episode. In the episode, we get a reference to Starbase 12, which has been mentioned before. In this episode, we're introduced to an eternal race, of which there are only a few inhabitants. These beings visited Earth 5,000 years ago, which makes it 2736 BC. The race is very humanoid and presumably able to mate with human, but in terms of a difference, possesses an organ which can channel energy. Presumably only a few visited Earth. We have no idea where the rest of the race is. Possibly they are the last of their race, and after they left Earth they went somewhere not of this world, with only Apollo left. It seems Apollo, which is one of these eternal race beings, is almost identical to a human, except he has an extra organ in his chest, which gives him his special powers. Lieutenant Palamas, or Caroline, is a specialist in archaeology, anthropology, ancient civilizations. It seems the Enterprise spends a lot of time studying a dead civilization, which is what they may have been doing when they came across Apollo. The key conclusions we get from this episode is that we have two more planets, Polis 4 and Polis 5. Polis 5 is an Earth-like planet, and it's also possibly that Polis 5 is also. However, apart from Apollo, there are no intelligent races on any of these planets. Perhaps Apollo's people terraformed a number of planets to live on until they disappeared, leaving good quality worlds with no one on them apart from Apollo. Starbase 12 is mentioned again. The Enterprise has a specialist in archaeology, anthropology, ancient civilizations. A race of travellers visited Earth 5,000 years ago, which were taken for gods and then left. Perhaps they left 5,000 years ago. The race is humanoid and able to breed with humans, so perhaps they affected Earth's evolution somehow. They possess an organ, which I assume their children with Terrans do not get, which allow them to channel energy. They are immortal and die out when Apollo disappears. Be interesting to have an episode where one of these offspring of this race suddenly discovers that he has this special organ in his chest and has special powers. Perhaps that could explain some of the special people in myths that have special powers that probably are not alien. Anyway, an interesting thought. Amok Time is the first episode of the second season. It was the 34th episode produced. Its star date is 3372.7 and its original air date was 15th of September 1967. This episode mentions another planet which has excellent shore facilities. It's called Altair 6. In the episode, we are told there are 3 starships scheduled to arrive on Altair. I assume all are sister ships of the Enterprise. We also discover that Vulcan mating urges are so strong they can kill a Vulcan. It appears that Vulcans must return to their own planet to mate, perhaps. This could explain why they have not created a large empire. When under its influence, that is the mating influence, they lose all control. In the episode, Spock considers Kirk and Bones as his closest friends. Good thing he asked Bones to accompany him, otherwise the episode would have ended very differently. We discover that Vulcan has something called a Space Central. It's not sure, or I'm not sure if it's a military or civilian organisation. Spock apparently has a wife, or at least a promised wife. Considering he had a fling with an Earthwoman on an earlier episode, Spock does not seem to be a very faithful person. Good thing they did not marry in the end. It also appears that Spock's family had held a piece of land for over 2,000 years, which may be a reflection of their longevity or of the high status of Spock's family. I suspect a combination of both. Spock's wife was selected by his parents in an arranged manner. That appears to be the standard Vulcan arrangement for this sort of stuff. Very logical, I assume. Spock's family includes a very important Vulcan, someone who turned down a seat on the Federation Council. Makes you wonder what this Federation Council is, perhaps like the English House of Lords. That does not sound like any election was held or would be required to get onto this particular council. On the other hand, perhaps it's a special position which can be bestowed on people for some special reason, again like the modern English House of Lords. Key takeaway from this episode is that we are provided the name of a planet, Altair 6, which is probably an alien planet. Its shore facilities are excellent. There has been some kind of war in the Altair system, which an inauguration ceremony is supposed to result in peace or some level of stabilization. The Klingons are involved, which is rather odd, as it's likely Vulcan is on the other side of Earth. On the other hand, there is no reason why the Klingons would not benefit from a conflict on the other side of the Federation, which may likely involve Federation planets. There are a lot of questions concerning Altair 6 and, unfortunately, few answers. Starfleet sees fit to send 3 starships to Altair 6 for the inauguration, one of which is the Enterprise. This represents, if they're all the same ship type, sister ships, 25% of the entire Federation capital ship fleet, which includes the starships that are scattered around Federation space. Vulcan is on the way to Altair 6, and the deviation costs 2 to 3 days. As Altair 6 is probably on the periphery of the Federation, and Vulcan closer to Earth, this probably makes sense. If only I knew where Altair 6 was, we could pinpoint Vulcan for certain. The Vulcan mating urge is insanely strong and has a significant effect on the health of a Vulcan. It seems the logic of the Vulcan is countered by this insanely strong mating urge. Spock considers Kirk and McCoy as his closest friends. Vulcan has a Vulcan Space Central. This could be a control tower type of organisation or could represent its fleet. We know the Vulcan starships are the same as the Enterprise class, which is something we discover later. Spock has a wife, or had a wife, who is called T'Pring. Spock's family has held the same land for over 2,000 years, which means that land became Spock's family's land in 264 AD, if not earlier. Vulcan mates are selected when they are 7 years old, when they engage in a mind touch. I assume this occurs with all Vulcans. There is a Federation Council, which has Vulcans as a member on it. I assume the Council is the type of Senate, where all 4 members have a seat. As indicated earlier, it's likely each semi-independent Earth planet also has a seat, such as Mars and Alpha 3, at least. The Doomsday Machine is the 6th episode of the 2nd season. It was the 35th episode produced. Its stardate is 4202.0 and its original air date was the 20th of October 1967. We have the name of another starship. If the Intrepid is a starship of the same class as the Enterprise, we have identified 3 of the Enterprise class starships. System L370 may have contained inhabited planets, but we are uncertain if anyone was actually on them. Regardless, the whole system was now destroyed, or at least the planets are. On the other hand, the L374 system does contain at least one inhabitable planet, but we are uncertain that, apart from the crew of the starship, if anyone was on it when it was also destroyed, the system is or was consumed by the weapon. The episode introduces us to an automated robot weapon capable of breaking up planets and then consuming them. The automated robot weapon has entered the galaxy, apparently from another galaxy. One planet threatened by this robot weapon is the Rigel system. The Rigel system has a population in the millions. The key takeaways of this episode is we discover the name of another starship. That is the Constellation. It appears to be a sister ship of the Enterprise. We are told of 2 systems now destroyed, which contain some habitable planets. It's unknown if there was anyone on any of these planets, but it's likely, apart from the crew of the Constellation, there may have been a few people around, but not many. We discover an automated Doomsday Machine which destroys planets. It comes from another galaxy, but we do not have any information about the aliens which created it. Presumably, the aliens were eliminated, otherwise why would they allow such a valuable military asset to travel to another galaxy? The only significant point is, are there any others? We know the Federation, assumed planet, has a population of millions. We have previously identified a Rigel 12, which is a mining planet, Rigel 2, which is a human non-colony planet, Rigel 7, which is an alien planet. I have to assume this is another Rigel, and it's in a different system to the others that we've already identified. Many of the later Star Trek movies and shows do not align with the original vision of the series. This is common in real history, as later historians attempt to change the past to justify their beliefs in the present. As I personally enjoyed the original vision of Star Trek, I would hope future material, that is, movies and TV, would go back to its original roots. However, I doubt it. This concludes episode 6 of my Star Trek, the original series episode breakdown video series, in this case covering episodes 30 to 35. Alle guten Dingen, kommen zu einem Ende.